4 times he had felt the weight of Olympic medals around his neck. He had set Olympic records too, some of which stood for decades. Off the track, he led a sort of Forrest Gumpian life, but without the low IQ. He was a stockbroker on Wall Street, an officer in the National Guard, and a World War I aviator. The victim of a rogue wave in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and the subject of the very first cartoon published in Ripley's Believe It or Not. Today, though, he wasn't even on the sidelines, except figuratively. He was way, way out of the spotlight, 4,000 miles away. In fact, as another man broke the tape and won an Olympic gold medal. And he couldn't have been happier. Today is Monday, September 8th, 2025, and on this day in 1881, future three-time Olympian, longtime Dartmouth and US Olympic track and field coach, and co-developer of a safer hurdle, Harry Hillman, was born in Brooklyn, New York. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. These days, it is newsworthy when technology malfunctions at an event where elite athletes are competing or when poor organization impacts the final results. But it was a very different story at the turn of the last century when organized sports, both amateur and professional, were run much, much differently. With a much more casual approach, more like a kindergarten field day or a spontaneous pickup basketball game in the park. The upside for athletes and others involved in the early days of athletics was that they could be trailblazers in a way that's almost unheard of today. Such was the case with Harry Livingston Hillman. He had a successful 10-year career in finance while winning Olympic medals and national championships, and before making significant contributions to the sport of track and field for the rest of his life. There isn't a lot of information out there about Hillman's early years. We know he was the younger of 2 children born in Brooklyn to parents Henry and Sarah, and graduated from the Boys High School of Brooklyn. His breakout year as an athlete was 1902 when he won the junior and senior AAU titles in the 220-yard hurdles. The following year, he claimed the AAU senior title in the open quarter mile. Which brings us to 1904. Now, when this year comes up, in an athlete's history, I almost always have a Pavlovian response. Quickening heartbeat, dilated pupils, moderate drooling, because the more episodes I do for this podcast, the more I give thanks for the 1904 Olympics. It is the gift that keeps on giving. I could do a daily podcast or write 16 books or otherwise devote the entirety of my waking hours just to the study of the 1904 Olympics. So incredibly bizarre and great in number are these stories that developed on those hot and dusty St. Louis backroads. But the story of Harry Hillman's 1904 Olympics would not make the cut, I'm afraid. It was too straightforward. He went to St. Louis, competed in 3 events, the 400 meters, 200-meter hurdles, and the 400-meter hurdles, and he won all of them. His 400-meter hurdles win was in world record time, but rules at the time invalidated the record because he knocked over a hurdle. On the other hand, Hillman's 1906 Olympics did provide a bit of drama. A day into the voyage from Hoboken, New Jersey to the Games in Athens, the ship carrying the 35-member US Olympic team was hit by a rogue wave as it crossed the Atlantic. Distance runner Harvey Cohn would have been swept overboard if not for the heroic actions of diver Frank Borneman and thrower James Mitchell, dislocated his shoulder. Hillman was one of 5 athletes who were injured in the incident, which hampered his performance in the 400 meters, his only event in those games. Despite his knee injury, Hillman finished 4th of 25 starters, just barely missing a medal. A bit of redemption came in 1908's London Games, where Hillman ran a career best of 55.3 seconds to take home the silver in that same event, missing out on the gold by 0.3 of a second to a USA teammate. Earlier that year, Hillman married fellow Brooklynite Hazel Quanton, with whom he would have 2 children. During this time, he was a lieutenant in the New York National Guard, where he earned a ton of accolades in military athletic competitions. By far the most significant of these, in this podcaster's expert opinion, occurred on April 24th, 1909, when he and a buddy ran the 100-meter three-legged race in 11 seconds flat, a world record that still stands to this day, in part because while the three-legged race is still run, that distance no longer is. But still. At those same military games, Hillman won 5 of the 6 events he entered. The 100 yards, 220 yards, 440 yards, and the 220-yard hurdles, as well as the aforementioned three-legged race. In what I assume is part of an insidious government cover-up, no information remains on what the 6th event was that he entered and lost. During his running career, Hillman collected nearly 60 championships between the Olympics, the military games, and titles in Metro New York, American, Canadian, and international competitions. The one he often named as his most memorable was his March 1907 win in Madison Square Garden, where he beat the USA's best intercollegiate quarter-miler, its half-miler, and the national half-miler in a 600-meter race. In 1910, the lifelong New Yorker left his job in finance and moved his family to Hanover, New Hampshire, which he had never even visited and reportedly couldn't find on a map, to become Dartmouth's head track coach. He later recalled arriving at the school in a horse-drawn sleigh, dismayed to find the temperature hovering around negative 25 degrees and the only track in sight an outdoors one. But he stayed, and over the next 35 years as a coach, trainer, and PE professor, he focused his attention on building a solid track program as collegiate athletics grew in prominence and relevance. Hillman took a leave from his coaching duties in order to serve as a lieutenant in the U.S. Aviation Corps during World War I in an administrative capacity. He was also a coach for the US Olympic track and field team for the 1924, 28, and 32 games. But it was a bit earlier, at the 1920 games in Antwerp, Belgium, where Hillman experienced what he considered to be his greatest achievement as a coach. Born in what is now called Saskatchewan and raised in California, Earl Thompson ran for Hillman at Dartmouth and became his protege and eventually lifelong friend. Thompson won the men's 110-meter hurdles at the Antwerp Games in a world record time, marking the first time that a non-U.S. athlete had medaled in that event since 1896. He would go on to win multiple AAU, IC4A, and NCAA championships. In the late 1920s and early 30s, Thompson, Hillman, and hurdler and coach Harold Barron worked together to engineer a hurdle that would be safer than the heavy wooden barriers that had been used for the sport for 100 years. Although stable, the patented Hillman hurdle was designed to tip over if a runner collided with it, an innovation that helped prevent serious injuries. He was also a believer in the power of raw eggs and salt tablets, requiring their use when he had the power to do so and strongly encouraging it when he did not. But more than that, he was known as someone who truly cared about the welfare of his athletes, not just how well they could perform. Hillman died suddenly a month shy of his 64th birthday at Dartmouth's College Infirmary following an episode of coronary thrombosis, and his gravestone in Hanover is engraved not just with the dates of his birth and death, but with those of his 35 years as the school's track coach. That's today's episode. Thank you, as always, for listening. Please go like, subscribe, comment, and share, and do all the things that will elevate this podcast because I am working quite hard on it and really appreciate y'all's support. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for a conversation with the man who won the Berlin Marathon with a time of just over 1 hour. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Longtime Dartmouth and US Olympic track and field. Oh my God. Track and field. A bit of dirt. Okay. In this podcaster's expert opinion, which he had never even visit. I do love New Hampshire, though. Do you know no, I wasn't born there. I was born in San Antonio. I got married in New Hampshire at a destination wedding in New Hampshire. So Harry Hillman would be proud.